if I slip off, it's rolling to my death, basically. My 2 tires on the side of the mountain, so basically I had to tip my whole truck like this, and then my 2 wheels are just hanging on the edge as my other 2 tires are basically riding on the wall of this mountainside. Okay, yeah, so Clifford, named after Clifford the big red dog, is this GMC Sierra 1997 big red truck. It's gone through our entire family. I'm the youngest in the family. I've got 3 older siblings, and they all drove this truck growing up as all their first vehicles that they started driving out in. And of course, the youngest child had to, unfortunately, not take the best care of it. And yeah, when I think I don't know how old I was, probably like 21 or something, or 22. I had this fascination of like going out and documenting just natural disasters like fires and stuff. And my personal truck was in the shop, and so I borrowed my dad's truck to go off-roading. These fires were like getting super close to neighborhoods and stuff, and I wanted to go and document it. And so I saw, like, out near Salem, Utah, I saw a radio tower. And whenever you see a radio tower, there's obviously a service road that gets to it. And so I was like, okay, I got to find this service road and try to drive up to the top of this tower and then have this like aerial view of the whole fire in the canyon. Because the fire was happening just the canyon right over. And so if I could get at that vantage point and like film and take photos, I would have been stoked. And so I like search on Google Maps just to see what route could get me there. And then it leads me onto this trail. And the trail starts out super wide, and then slowly it starts to narrow into like an ATV trail. And it's kind of like a monkey trap in a way. Like you don't realize it until you're too far in. And it turned into this loose shell rock to where every time, like once I realized that it was getting narrower and narrower, I was like, oh, I got to go in reverse and try to back up. But I was like 2 miles in at this point, so I would have to reverse for like 2 miles. And as I'm reversing, I would keep sliding down the shell rock, and I would try to like, crank up and turn up onto the mountain, but it just wasn't working, and I kept losing all my traction. And then it got to the point where I could only go forward. And so at that point, I decided the only way I could get my wheels on the edge of this mountain, and the mountain's steep. It's like, if I slip off, it's rolling to my death, basically. And the only way I could stay on the actual road was to put my 2 tires on the side of the mountain. So basically I had to tip my whole truck like this, and then my 2 wheels are just hanging on the edge of this mountain as my other 2 tires are basically riding on the wall of this mountainside. And so I'm just inching slowly, just creaking, and just praying I don't die, because like I was in absolute survival mode. And then I kind of did a reconnaissance mission. I got out of my car and I was like, how much further do I have to keep doing this for? And I found that like probably about 50 yards ahead, there was like this little switchback. And at that switchback, there was enough space, I think, to take probably like a 1,000-point turn to like flip around and then drive back downwards, not in reverse. And so I was like, that was my goal. I was like, I just got to make it to that elbow, and then I can turn around and then drive back home. And so I just kept going and going. I was like, I can make it. And then all of a sudden my back wheel slips off. The driver's side back wheel slips off, and then I think it catches on the differential, and it's just like teetering on this little boulder that's like holding the whole vehicle. And at that point I was like, I gotta bail. So I bailed out of the vehicle, and I just didn't want to risk it anymore because it was just ready to slide. And so at that point I was trapped on the mountain. I like hiked down, call some friends to pick me up. And I'm just thinking in my head, how in the world am I gonna get this truck off the mountain? And what am I gonna tell my dad? And because it's his truck. And so I don't think anybody I told really realized how tricky and hairy of a situation this was. And so like when I told the news, they're like, oh yeah, like I had, neighbors and stuff like, oh yeah, we can take my Jeep out there. It's no big deal. And we'll get it off the mountain ASAP with a winch. And they drive out there. And this guy's got this like modded out Jeep, just huge, like lifted, and it's just this absolute beast, and it's got this monster winch. And he starts driving up the road, and he's like, no, I'm not gonna take my Jeep on this road. This is just way too hairy. I'm not gonna risk it. And they're all in shock, like, how in the world did you even get up that high? And apparently this road was like infamous in the town of Salem. Like, tons of people have crashed vehicles on it. People have died. Like, people will ride motorcycles up it and fall, and so basically, like, all the locals there were in shock to see my truck that far up the mountain. I like broke a record for the furthest. Like, they said like a Samurai had almost gotten to where my truck has been, which are like those tiny little, you know, toy Jeep type style cars. And for them to see this big, you know, GMC Sierra that high up was just shocking to them. They couldn't believe it. And then suddenly, like, this was probably the most exciting thing that happened in Salem. Salem's a pretty small town. They have like the rodeo every year, and that's probably like their biggest event. But this was now like the pinnacle and highlight of the decade, of like this nutty kid that just decided to drive his truck up a mountain and get stuck. And every local I would run into, they either had like 3 reactions. It was either like, you've got some serious balls, or what were you thinking, or you're lucky to be alive, or like basically the 3 reactions. And all of a sudden I got a phone call from like the mayor of Salem, and he was there with like the chief of the fire department and the sheriff. And they were all like, we've got to get your truck off the mountain ASAP because the fire is now closing in, and they don't want to be liable for my truck just getting completely obliterated in this massive forest fire. And so I'm suddenly feeling all this pressure, like, how in the world am I going to get it off? My options were like, oh, we could probably grab a helicopter and pay $5,000 to like pull it off the mountain. But I was like, I don't want to do that. And all of a sudden, while I was on the trail, this dirt biker drives past, and he stops, and he's like, are you the guy whose truck is up there? And I was like, yeah, that's mine. And he's like, hey, I volunteer part of this team. We're the Utah Off-Road Recovery Team. We've got a Facebook page, and we just gather a bunch of volunteers together, and we just help cars get unstuck. And I was like, man, that's a miracle. And so we recruit all of his buddies off of his Facebook page. They all meet up, and they come in with this massive, like, 250 truck, and they try to drive up there. Obviously, they're not even going to risk it. And they look at the situation, and they try to see if they can like pound in a winch somewhere to pull my truck out, or find a tree to latch onto, but there was nothing. It was just bare, and they're just like, yeah, you're screwed. And I was like, oh, dang it. Like, if my one and only shot thinks it's done for, then I think I'm at a loss here. So we all talked together and what our options were, and our best bet was to see if we could just kind of like try to guide it off the mountain, or just kind of like hopefully push it in an angle where like it could survive the steep mountain face and just somehow like survive the fall down the mountain. And so we all get around it, and we're just kind of checking the stability of the truck. And then all of a sudden, like as we were like barely rocking it, the whole truck just slips off that little boulder that was hanging onto. And the truck is in park, and the emergency brake is on, but it was so steep that like once it slipped off that rock, it just like was just sliding like a sled on snow, just flying down this mountain face. And it starts picking up tons of speed, and it's like going backwards, like tailgate first. And we didn't realize it, but there's this 60-foot cliff below, and it launches off the 60-foot cliff, and all you hear was like just silence for like 3 seconds, and then just a big boom, and then all of a sudden you see it just tomahawk, just head over heels, and in that tomahawk motion, the tailgate just like catapults off of the truck and launches probably like 200 feet in the air, and then you just hear it come to a complete stop. And at that point I was like, yeah, there's no way that truck survived. No chance at all. And so yeah, we drove down there, looked at the wreckage. It was completely twisted and mangled, and then the sheriff came, and he ripped my head off and was like, this is private property, you got to pick up every single piece that you leave, or else I'm going to fine you for littering. And so I then spent the rest of the day just picking up every tiny little shattered part of my truck as yeah, it was one of the worst days. I remember I was so crushed, but my dad was there the whole time, and he was a good sport. And honestly, this shows the character of my dad. Like the entire time while he was there, I was waiting for him to just like rip my head off, but he was actually just like, he knew that I was like, I already learned the lesson. He didn't need to just keep like, pounding it into me and just like make me upset. So he knew that I was hurting. So instead he just like decided to turn it into a positive experience and just had fun with it. And he was actually the one that like gave it the biggest push off, and he started laughing. And then as he like saw the wreckage below, he just laughed his head off and just turned it into kind of a fun memory. So instead of it becoming this like toxic, just heavy, scar in my memory, it's now become kind of a cherished memory that my dad and I have grown to love and laugh about to this day.